Hi, Miss Nichols class. I'm Miss Jasmine or Miss Hollingsworth, whichever you prefer. I am the author of Yoga is for Everybody, and I have some questions that your teacher sent me to answer. So let's jump right in, shall we? The first question I have is, what will help us be a better writer? The first thing that will help you be a better writer would be reading. Read a ton. Read all the time. Read any chance you get, anything that interests you, especially things that interest you. Reading is probably the single most important thing, I would say, to being a good author, because it not only inspires you, but it also helps you understand how to construct similar works of your own and develop your own style. You kind of get an idea of what you like and what you want to do, and the first thing you always do is you sort of imitate someone else, right, before you find your own style. So reading and figuring out what styles are out there is really, really important. Also, practice. Grab a notebook or grab a stack of paper and write whenever you get inspired to do so, and write whatever you want. Don't worry about making it perfect. Just start writing. Start, crafting your own stories and finding your voice and finding your style. And maybe you let your friends and family read them. Maybe it's just for you. But any way you cut it, practice makes perfect. The second question I have is, how do you come up with your ideas? Well, I draw inspiration from my life. I am a yoga teacher and I'm a mom. And I volunteer teach at public schools in the Baltimore, Maryland area to children with special needs and children in disadvantaged demographics. And so for my book, Yoga is for Everybody, what inspired that was one of my students asked me why the books that I was reading during yoga didn't feature any children that looked like him. So I decided there needed to be a book out there that did. And so I wrote one. So you just kind of come up with your ideas from whatever inspires you, whatever excites you, and then go from there. How much practice will it take me to become an author? Well, just like practicing yoga, you're never done practicing, right? Even the book I wrote before, that was practice for my next book. So you're really never done practicing. So, as much practice as you need. I would say practice whenever the inspiration hits you, and find a style or subject that you enjoy and start there. And how do you make the perfect illustration? Well, the trick to my illustrations is that they're not perfect, right? If you look at the pictures in my book, or the books that I've illustrated, the illustrations aren't perfect. There's some wobbly lines, and the hands don't look perfect on the people that I draw, and that's sort of something that people like about my illustrations, is that they don't look perfect. So an illustration doesn't have to be perfect to everyone, right? It doesn't have to look exactly like the object that you're trying to draw. It just needs to convey the message or the emotion that you're trying to convey. So let's see, what else do I have on that? It can support a cause. It can, stir up, a happy emotion or a sad emotion. But often it's not meant to look perfect. Art is what they say subjective, right? It's not always meant to look beautiful or perfect. It's meant to make you feel something. So my advice would be to figure out the message you're trying to communicate or the emotion you're trying to invoke and start there. Do you have to keep trying until you have it perfect? So going back to making it perfect. As a yoga teacher, I really prefer not to use the word perfect, because that implies that there's something wrong with making mistakes. And there is nothing wrong with making mistakes. We're human. That's what we do. We make all kinds of mistakes, right? The point of any practice, whether it's writing or illustrating or yoga, is to do your best, right? So for writing or illustrating, do your research. Really think about what it is that you're trying to convey, right? Make sure you know what you're doing. Research, which is what you're doing right now, right? You're asking somebody who's already written that story or illustrated a story. Research how it's done. Research the different components that you need to incorporate. Make sure that you edit. Make sure that you have words spelled correctly and that you're using the right words, right? You've spelled things correctly, that you're using proper punctuation, right? And you're going to have people, you're going to read over it several times, and you're going to have other people read over it several times. So, and then once you've done that and you've done the best that you can do, that's your perfect, right? Just do the best that you can do. I've read plenty of books out there by very famous authors who have sold many, many books, and I still see mistakes sometimes. That's because we're human. So instead of focusing on making it perfect, focus on doing the best that you can do, whether it be writing or whether it be illustrating something or playing baseball or dancing, whatever it is that you do. Just do it to the best of your ability. When did you make your first book? Well, I probably wrote hundreds of stories, since I was young. But the first one that I actually published was Yoga is for Everybody, and that was this past year. Is it fun to be an author? It is, but it's a lot of work. Sometimes you have deadlines that you have to meet, so you have to really kind of hurry up and try to reach those deadlines. But with writing and illustrating, that takes a component of creativity. And if you're tired, or you're not taking care of yourself, or maybe you have a lot of other things, maybe you got a lot of schoolwork, or some other things that are drawing your attention, it can be difficult to meet those deadlines. So making sure that you schedule your time and try to find time for it each day and find time to take care of you as well so that you have that ability to create is important. And sometimes you need to take a break and walk away for a little bit until that inspiration comes back to you. But it is definitely fun to be an author. It's wonderful to be able to do what you love. How old do you have to be an author? I love that question. You can be an author at any age at all. As long as you're old enough to tell a story, you can be an author. And right now, if you're wanting to publish a book, you might need some adults to review it, edit it, and you need to edit it, but you can be an author at any age. If you're writing a story right now, you are an author. What are the key elements in writing a book? Well, first, you need to brainstorm. You need to figure out, why are you writing this book? Is there a message you want to convey to your readers? Is there something you want to make them feel? And then you need to figure out, is this going to be a fictional story, or is it going to be a non-fictional story? So is it going to be a story about something that isn't really real, didn't really happen? Or is it going to be maybe a biography about somebody, or a story about something that actually happened? And then what is the story about? Who are the characters? What's the setting? If there is one. My book doesn't have a setting. It really doesn't have characters. So that's part of the thing that you need to consider in those books, right? In those stories. From whose viewpoint will the story be told? Will it be told from your viewpoint as a narrator, or will it be from a character that's in the book? Will the character be, the main character? Or will they be a character that's sort of watching from the sidelines? What happens in the beginning, the middle, or the end of the story? Is there going to be a conflict and a resolution? Is something going to happen that, brings tension into the story and makes you think, oh no, and then it gets resolved at the end? Maybe it doesn't have a resolution. Maybe that's part of the story. So you have to think of all those little components. And what I suggest doing is making an outline. And so that you have all of those things written down. So make an outline, answer all your questions, put it all into an outline, and then put an outline for the beginning, the middle, the end. What's going to happen in each piece, right? And then once you've got all that down, then start writing your story. How do we publish a book? Well, there's several ways to go about publishing a book. Once you've completed your manuscript, which is your finished story, and you've researched different publishers maybe that you'd like to try. So you could look in some of your favorite books and see, who are they published by, right? Maybe books that have a similar style to your own. So if you're publishing a graphic novel, you want to look up people who publish graphic novels. For me, I looked up publishers who did kids' yoga stories, right? So you need to research publishers, and I suggest reaching out to several of them so that you have some choices and you can compare what they're offering. And don't worry if they don't get back to you, because that happens. So it happens to all of us. If none of them get back to you, it's totally fine. Sometimes they take a really, really long time too. Another way to publish is self-publishing, and that's what I did, actually. I ended up doing, I'm discussing with a publisher right now about the book that's already published, but it took them so long to get back to me, I just went ahead and published it myself. And so that's where you pay upfront to have your book printed, and you're responsible for your own marketing and advertising, so getting the word out there that you have a book, and also to distributing it to your customers, making sure that when they buy it, they receive that product, right? And so there's services that can help you with that process. They provide a platform for you to advertise and sell your book on, and Amazon is one of them. That's what I used. But neither of those ways is better than the other. They're both, equally, good ways to go about publishing. They just offer different advantages and disadvantages, so you have to figure out what's best for you. How long does it take to write a book? Well, it depends on the book, and it depends on the person. So if you're writing a novel, it might take you several years to complete. If you're really dedicated and you have a lot of time to spend on it, it might take you maybe a month or two. So it just really kind of depends on the type of book. If you're writing a children's story book like I did, it'll take a lot less time to write, most likely, but the illustrations can take a really long time. It took me maybe a day to write Yoga is for Everybody, but it took several months for me to complete the illustrations. They took a lot longer than it did to write the book, and the book I illustrated also took several months to complete. What advice would you give us on becoming an author? Read lots of books. Lots of books. Read all the time. Whatever you can, and never stop learning. Never stop learning. Practice, practice, practice. And just remember, perfection isn't the goal. Doing your best is. Right? Now that I've answered all of your questions, I thought maybe you would like me to read you Yoga is for Everybody. Yoga is for Everybody by Jasmine Hollingsworth. For Kai, Reef, and Amma. Each of us is different in our own special way. Different skin, different hair, different ways to say. Hello, I love you, or have a nice day. We all have different bodies, and they can do different things. We celebrate our differences and the diversity it brings. If a rainbow was just one color, it wouldn't be a rainbow anymore. It's much better with lots of different colors to explore. If red didn't look like red, but instead it looked like blue, a rainbow wouldn't have the same effect. It would have a different hue. We each have different talents, different gifts, different roles to play. When I honor the difference in you and you honor the difference in me, that's the meaning of Namaste. If you were just like your neighbor, or your neighbor was just like you, there would be no one to do all the amazing things you each can do. So be proud of who you are and all that you can do. Because there isn't anybody on this earth that's quite like you. and recognize that what makes your friends unique is what is special about them too. Namaste. The light within me honors the light within you. Well, Miss Nichols class, I hope you enjoyed Yoga is for Everybody, and I look forward to reading your stories someday.